Yes. So good morning student. This is my first lecture on the course Design and Analysis of Algorithm. And in this lecture I am going to cover the introduction part of this course, Design and Analysis of Algorithm. So in my classroom I have covered up to unit 4. So just unit 5, that is approximation algorithms, was remaining. But here my plan is little different. So in few of my initial lectures I shall be reiterating the things which I have already covered in the classroom. Then I shall resume with the uncovered portion, that is unit 5, approximation algorithm. So before I start this introduction part of this course, let me tell you, many important activities of our day-to-day life involve some kind of algorithm. For example, we are doing some calculation using our calculator that use some kind of algorithm. For example, a calculator use addition algorithm, subtraction algorithm, multiplication algorithm, etc. Right. Another example we can take, suppose we want to move from one place to another place in a city. So what we are doing, we are just taking our mobile phone and we are opening that Google Map app. We are setting the destination point where we want to move. Then that Google Map app, it is giving us a possible route to move to the destination. So how it is calculating that route? So it is using some kind of algorithm, and possibly we can say it is using some kind of shortest path algorithm, or we can say it is using some kind of routing algorithm. So like this, there are many examples of our day-to-day life which use some kind of algorithm. So let's start with the formal definition of algorithm. Yes. So an algorithm is a step-by-step procedure which defines a set of instructions to be executed in some order to get some output. So simply saying, algorithm is a step-by-step procedure to solve any kind of problem. So we can say an algorithm is like a mathematical function, or it is like a logical machine which takes some input and which gives us some output. So for a given problem, we can have many possible solutions, or we can have many algorithms, or we can say we can have many methods to solve that problem. Right. So as already told, for a given problem we can have many solutions, or we can have many algorithms. So now in this course, our target is not to design algorithm for a given problem. Rather, our target is to analyze the several algorithms proposed for a given problem and to find the best algorithm out of those. So let's say, for example, for this problem we are having 4 different solutions, or we are having 4 different algorithms. So we have to check the efficiency of this algorithm, and we have to find out, or we have to choose the best one out of them. So now once an algorithm is written, we can check their efficiency by taking these 2 parameters into consideration. First one is computer space, and second one is the CPU time. The algorithm which takes less computer space is said to be more efficient, and similarly the algorithm which takes less CPU time is said to be more efficient. For example, I will say an algorithm to find addition of 2 integers. Let's say student X is writing the algorithm like this: Z equal to X plus Y, where X and Y are the input and Z is the output. And student Y will write like this: Z equal to X plus Y plus W minus W. So again it is finding the same task, addition of 2 integers, because plus W and minus W will cancel out, and obviously it will be same as the earlier expression, Z equal to X plus Y. But so both these algorithms will give us the same result, but the first algorithm is more efficient than the second algorithm. Why? Because the space required by the first algorithm is less than the space required by the second algorithm. Because in my first algorithm we are using 3 variables X, Y, Z, but in the second algorithm by Y we are using 4 variables like X, Y, Z and W. So we will go in detail later on how to check the efficiency of an algorithm by considering this computer space and computer time into consideration. So now let us see what are the characteristics of an algorithm. So the first characteristics is unambiguous. Unambiguous means each step of an algorithm must be unambiguous, means they must not have dual meaning, because if a particular step or a particular statement in an algorithm will have dual meaning, then the compiler cannot execute those kind of statement. So the statement or the steps mentioned in an algorithm must have one meaning or must have unique meaning. So that is called unambiguous. So next is input. So all algorithms should have 0 or more number of well-defined input. So algorithm can also have 0 input. For example, I will ask to write an algorithm to display your name. So it will take no input. It will simply display your name. So it is just giving us the output, the name, but it is not taking any input. But what is the meaning of this well-defined input? For example, our algorithm is to find addition of two integers. And our inputs are like 5 and 7, so obviously the output will be 5 plus 7, it is 12. But what if my inputs are let's say plus and j? Okay, so obviously it will not give us any output, because the inputs are not proper, or we can say the inputs are not numeric, or we can say the inputs are not well defined. So algorithm should have 0 or more number of well defined input. So similarly, algorithm should have one or more number of well-defined output, and the output should match the desired output. In the sense, if we want to find addition of two integer, means inputs are 5 and 3, output should be 5 plus 3, 8. It should not be 5 into 3, 15, right? So output should always match our desired output. Next characteristics of algorithm is finiteness, and this says all algorithms should terminate, or all algorithms should finish after a finite number of steps. They should not run for an infinite period of time, right? And next characteristics is feasibility. So all algorithms should be feasible with available resource and environment. So we cannot plan something, or we cannot write something in our algorithm which are practically infeasible. For example, I will write an algorithm to, let's say my algorithm is to know my future with the help of a palm scanner, and the problem is like that there will be a scanner which will scan my palm, and there will be a video display which will display the future activities of an individual. So these kind of things are purely infeasible. So all the statement or all the things that are mentioned in an algorithm should be feasible, means those should be we can say they should be implemented in some kind of programming language. And the last characteristics of algorithm is independent, and it says the algorithm should be independent of any kind of programming code. Okay, so once an algorithm is written, the same algorithm can be translated into any programming code. For example, same addition algorithm can be written using C language, it can be written using C++, it can be written using Java or any other programming language. So these are the all characteristics of an algorithm. Yes. So now the next is how to write an algorithm. So practically saying, there is no well-defined standards for writing algorithms, because algorithms are always problem and resource dependent, because the algorithm style, they always varies from one kind of problem to another kind. Okay, so there is no well-defined standards, and we can say algorithm, they never going to support a particular programming code. As already told you, once an algorithm is written, the same algorithm can be translated into any programming code. But one thing that is common, that all algorithms should use some common basic constructs like loop, you might have studied in C language, we are having that for loop, while loop, for iteration kind of thing. They can also use conditional statement like if, else, switch case, all these things, right? So here I have given a very simple algorithm for addition of two integer. So step 1, so I am starting this function or procedure add. Then step 2 is get the values of a and b. Then step 3 is the calculation. So this step 2 is basically the input part of the algorithm, and step 3 is the output or the calculation part of the algorithm, and this is the printing output part of the algorithm and this stuff. So these are the basic simple steps to find the addition of two integer a and b, let's say. So we can say this is a simple algorithm to find addition of two numbers or integers. So now while writing the algorithm, writing this step number, it is optional. So simply you can write start add, then get values a and b. So now I'll say one more thing here. We all have written program in C, C++ or Java. Okay, so one thing we can mark here, that these algorithms are the informal way of writing a program. Okay, so once you have the algorithm, you can write the program, and once you know the program, you can also do the reverse thing, then you can write the algorithm. Okay, but algorithm is the first thing or the basis of writing a program. Okay, so now once an algorithm is written, the important task is to analyze the algorithm to check its efficiency. So the analysis of an algorithm can be done in two phases. One is before the compilation or execution of the actual algorithm, and another is after the execution or the compilation of the actual algorithm. So before the execution of actual program or algorithm, that is called a priori analysis. So this is just the theoretical analysis of an algorithm, in which we check the efficiency of an algorithm by taking the hardware aspects into consideration, like the processor speed, the memory, and other hardware resources present in a computer system. For example, our processor speed is very high, we'll say our algorithm is efficient. We have much more memory in our computer system, we'll say yes, algorithm is efficient. Okay, so we can say this is just a theoretical analysis of an algorithm, and the efficiency of the algorithm is being decided by the hardware component that is present in a computer system. But in this posterior analysis, we do actual analysis of an algorithm without taking that hardware components of a computer system into much consideration. So here in posterior analysis, we calculate two things to check the efficiency of an algorithm. First one is the time required by the algorithm to run, and another is the space required by the algorithm to run. So the time required by an algorithm for its run is known as time complexity, and the space required by an algorithm for its run is known as space complexity. So an algorithm that is taking less time or having less time complexity and taking less space, or we can say less space complexity, are efficient. So in this course, our target is to minimize the time complexity, means the time required, and the space complexity, means the space required by our algorithms. Okay, so clearly I have mentioned here time factor. It is the computer time needed by our algorithm for its run, and basically that depend upon the operations or the steps I am writing in my algorithm. So more complex operations may take more time and hence lead to more time complexity. Okay, so this thing we'll see in detail while designing our algorithm. So the next already told the space factor or the space complexity. Okay, so we'll try to minimize this as well to have minimum space complexity for our algorithm. Okay, so the complexity of an algorithm, it is nothing but it is a function fn, and where n is nothing but it is the number of input, or we can say the input size. So as the input size will increase, obviously the space will increase and the time will also increase. But our target is to just check the kind of growth of this time and space with increase in the value of n. Okay, so we shall start with our first algorithm. Very simple algorithm, already taught in your first semester, insertion sort algorithm. Okay, so this is our insertion sort algorithm. Okay, so let me demonstrate you the insertion sort algorithm first, then I will come to the algorithm. Okay, so let's say this is an unsorted sequence 5 2 4 6 1 3, and these are the indexes where the elements are placed. So 5 is placed at index 1, 2 is placed at index 2, and so on. So our target is to sort this list using insertion sort. Okay, so here you can clearly mark I have started the loop from j equal to 2. Okay, so you start from the second index. Okay, so the second index element is 2. Okay, so you just select this element and try to insert it in its proper place by considering all the elements present to its left. So to its left only 5 is present, so the whole list will become 5 2. So are they sorted? No, so it should be 2 and 5. So here in the second iteration I am writing 2 5. So next iteration I will shift to 3, because in the first iteration I was at index 2. So again you try to insert this 4 at its proper position by considering the list present to its left. So it is 2 5 4. So no, so it should be 2 4 5. Yes, 2 4 5. So next you move to index 4. So it will be 6. Try to insert 6 at its proper position. So 2 4 5 6. It is already sorted, so it will be same 2 4 5 6. So next you move to next index 5. The element is 1, and try to insert at its proper position. So 2 4 5 6 1. So it should be 1 2 4 5 6. So yes. Then go to the last index position 6. The element is 3. Try to insert it at its proper position by considering the whole list. Right. So it should be 1 2 3. Okay. So this is how an insertion sort works. Okay. So all these things whatever I have demonstrated are being carried out by this operation. So in each iteration I am selecting an element from a particular index, and I am inserting that particular element in its proper position by using this code. Okay, so now let us analyze the complexity, time complexity of this algorithm. Okay, now same algorithm I have written here, step 1 step 2, like that. I have marked each statement as one step. Okay, so let's say this particular step requires cost C1, this one requires cost C2, this cost C3, like that. The last step cost C8. Okay, so now the step 1, it will run for how many times? So you assume that a dot length means the length of the list. Let's say it is n, so you expect it should run for n minus 2, right? It should run for n minus 2 number of times, because I am starting from j equal to 2. Sorry, it will run for n minus 1 number of times. You expect it to run for n minus 1 number of time, because it is starting from j equal to 2 to n, right? Because if I am starting from 2 to 5, then 2 3 4 5, so 4 times. So 2 to 5 means 4 times. 2 to 10 means 9 times. So 2 to n means it should run for n minus 1 time, but it is written here n times. Why? Because in the last iteration it will just check the condition, but the loop will not execute. So always one extra condition has to be executed in case of any kind of loop. So here we expect it to be what, n minus 1, but it will be one more, that will be n minus 1 plus 1, that is n, right? So if the loop condition is working n time, then obviously the statement present inside the loop will run one less than the time for which the loop body will work, right? So this particular statement will run for n minus 1, and this will obviously for n minus 1, and this will obviously for n minus 1. So now let's say here this whole thing depend upon the value of I, right? This thing depend upon the value of I. So let's say for jth iteration, the time required by this particular step is Tj. Okay, so the total time will be what? Summation Tj, j varies from 2 to n. So if it will run for Tj time, then these two statements are present inside this, so they will run for Tj minus 1, this will also run for Tj minus 1. So summation Tj minus 1, summation Tj minus 1, j varies from 2 to n. And obviously this is only a part of this for loop. So this is running for n times, means this will run for n minus 1 time. So we can say the total running time of this algorithm will be C1 into n plus C2 into n minus 1 plus C3 into n minus 1 plus C4 into n minus 1, like that. Because the first step it is taking cost C1, but running for how many times? N times. So total cost for first step will be what? C1 into n. For similarly for second step it will be C2 into n minus 1, and so on. Okay. So let us see in details. Right. So Tn denote what? The running time of our algorithm, insertion sort algorithm. So it will be C1 into n. And here I have written what? C3 into n minus 1. In place of that I have written what? 0. Why? Because comment line are never executed in a program. So comment line, they do not take any time. Okay. So any comment lines are there in your algorithm, you can consider their time as 0. Okay. So this is the general equation to find the time complexity or the time required by our insertion sort algorithm. So now for this insertion sort algorithm, we will analyze its time complexity in 3 different scenarios. So first we will take the best case, second we will take the average case, and the third we will take the worst case. So best case always gives us the minimum possible time to run the program. Worst case always gives us the maximum possible time to run our program or algorithm. And the average case always gives us the average time required to run our program. Right. So now this best case of insertion sort algorithm occurs when the list is already sorted. The list is already sorted. So if the list is already sorted, then that inside while loop, that will not work ever. Okay, so we can say in that case Tj will be 1. So in place of all Tj, I can put 1. So if I am doing that, so Tj is 1 and summation 1, j varies from 2 to n, it will be what? N minus 1. This will be 0, this will be 0. So after substituting all the values, I will have this. Okay, so bring all n terms at one place and all constant terms at one place. This will be like that. So clearly I can say, I can express this as an plus b, where a is c1 plus c2 plus c4 up to c8, and b is minus 2 minus c4 minus c5 minus c8. So clearly the best case running time of insertion sort algorithm is some linear function of the input size n, right? So now if we will check the worst case time complexity of insertion sort, this worst case occurs when the elements of the given list are in a reverse sorted order, So for this case, the inside while loop, that will run for the maximum time, that is for jth iteration they will run for j times. So in this case we can put tj equal to j. So now if we are putting that tj equal to j, we have to calculate this term and this term target, right? So summation tj, in place of tj we can place j, so it will be 2 plus 3 up to n. This is simple calculation. Okay. Similarly tj minus 1 we can write like this, 1 plus 2 plus up to n minus 1, it will be n minus. Now substituting the values of summation tj and summation tj minus 1, j varies from 2 to n, we will have the expression like this. And after simplification we will be getting this by bringing all n square term at one place, bringing all n terms at one place, bringing all constant terms at one place. So this whole thing can be expressed like this, an square plus bn plus c. So this is nothing but this is a quadratic function of n. So we can say the worst case time complexity of insertion sort is a quadratic function of the input size n, right? So now for average case analysis, the given list will be partly sorted and partly unsorted. So for this case we will assume tj value is j by 2, and after substituting the value of tj in the above expression, we can find the value of summation tj, this value, and summation tj minus 1, this one. Okay, and after substituting the values, okay, bringing all n square terms at one place, all n terms at one place, all constant term at one place. So we can express this as n square plus bn plus c. So again the average case time complexity of insertion sort is some quadratic function of the input size n, right? So we can say after analyzing this insertion sort algorithm, the best case time complexity of insertion sort is order of n or proportional to the input size n, and the average and worst case time complexity of insertion sort is order of n square, or we can say proportional to n square, where n is the input size. Input size means the number of elements present in the given array. Okay, so now these are various algorithm design techniques we will use throughout our course, and all these things I have already covered in my classrooms, and all these things are present up to unit 4. Only the last thing I have not covered, approximation algorithm, that is present in unit 5. Okay. So these are various techniques to solve any kind of problem or to design algorithm for a problem. So the first technique is divide and conquer. So in this technique divide and conquer, we take a particular problem and we divide the problem into sub problem. Then further we divide our sub problem into further sub problems. So like this we goes or keep on dividing our problem into sub problem till the problem size is very small. So once the problem size is fundamental or very small, we can solve or we can conquer them easily. Okay. So after conquering or after solving the smaller sub problem, we can combine the solution to get the final solution. Okay. So this is suitable for kind of problem where the input size is more. So in each iteration we are dividing the large problem into smaller sub problem. Okay. So first phase is division till the fundamental problem size is obtained. Next step is conquer, means solving the fundamental size problem, and the last stage is combining the fundamental size problem solution. Okay. I can take a very simple analogy of this divide and conquer technique. You take a bunch of stick and try to break them using your two hands. So it's not so easy, but you just bring a single stick from that bunch, so you can break it easily. So thing is that problem size is big or problem size is complex, you cannot solve them all together. So better you just divide your problem into small problems, and individual small problems can be conquered or can be solved easily. So using this divide and conquer approach, we can solve that binary search algorithm, quick sort, merge sort. Already I have discussed all these things, right? So the next technique is greedy technique. There is a printing mistake. This should be fractional knapsack, separate thing. Okay. So in greedy technique, we take a particular problem and we opt the solution which looks best at that particular moment. We take a particular problem and we try to find the solution that looks best at that particular moment. So this greedy technique, it may or may not always give us the optimal solution, because the solution that looks best at a particular moment may not be our final optimized solution. Okay, but this somehow help us to find the optimal solution. For example, we want to find the topper student in a district of various school present in a particular district. So for a particular village, there will be a topper student. So he or she, that particular student, he is the greedy choice for that particular village. So like this, there will be many greedy choice for many villages, but finally there will be only one solution. Okay, so that particular solution will not match with all the individual greedy choice. Okay, so greedy technique always give us the solution that looks best at a particular moment of time, right? And obviously this help us to find the final optimal solution in greedy technique. And the algorithm based upon this technique are fractional knapsack, Huffman coding, etc. Already I have discussed, right? So now the next thing is dynamic programming. Okay, so this is a best algorithm design technique, and in this technique we solve our problem in a bottom-up fashion. So we take the individual sub problem and we find the solution and try to find the best possible solution out of those individual sub problem, then finally combine them to find the final optimized solution. So now the next method is branch and bound method. In this branch and bound method, there are some algorithms which cannot be bounded, right? So what we can do, we can just divide them into sub problem so that individual sub problem can be bounded together. Okay, so we can say this kind of method, they are quite tedious and they takes time almost proportional to exponential function, but somehow there are some cases we found this branch and bound method very useful, and these are the problems which can be solved using this branch and bound TSP problem, and many other problems are there. The next technique is backtracking algorithm. So in backtracking algorithm, what we do, we start from a single point, but from that single point we used to have many possible directions to get our final destination, right? So we opt any of the path, but at some point of time we realize that that path is not good for us, or may not lead us the optimized solution. So again we retrace back to our original position. So that is called backtracking algorithm. So here we will see this DFS algorithm and many more algorithms. So all these things I have already discussed in my class, right? And next is randomized algorithm, and in this randomized algorithm better we can take that a quicksort example. In quicksort example, we generally consider the last element as the pivot node, but in randomized algorithm we can pick any of the element as the random node. Okay, so this one approximation algorithm, I will start in fresh whenever I will start with that unit 5. So in my next lecture I am going to discuss that asymptotic notation, that is the asymptotic notation to represent the time complexity of algorithm. So before I wind up my lecture, let me tell you once again the main factors that affect the efficiency of algorithm. One is time factor, another is space factor. So space factor you can easily understand. It means the amount of computer space needed by our algorithm to run the program. It is in terms of either KB, MB or GB. You can consider anything. But what about the computer time, right? So does this computer time match with our clock time? No, because computer time means it is the CPU time. It is the CPU time. For example, whenever we are purchasing a computer, we look into the processor speed. Let's say our processor speed is 2 gigahertz. So hertz is the unit of frequency, right? So 2 gigahertz means 2 into 10 power 9 hertz. Okay, and the definition of frequency is like that. It is the number of cycle completed per unit second, or in a 1 second, in a second, right? So it means 2 gigahertz processor means the CPU can complete 2 into 10 power 9 cycle in 1 second. CPU can complete 2 into 10 power 9 cycle in 1 second, and assume that one operation require 1 cycle of CPU. Let's say z equal to x plus y. It will take 1 CPU cycle. So it means in 1 second we can perform how many such fundamental operation? We can perform 2 into 10 power 9 fundamental operation. Okay, but there are many things like recursion construct, loops. Those do not take 1 CPU cycle. Rather, one operation may take around 1000 CPU cycle or anything. Okay, so next class we shall start with that asymptotic notation to calculate the time complexity of algorithm. Thank you.